We built this workbench a couple months back and it's been absolutely awesome. The one thing though that we want to improve is we want to utilize all this space underneath for something a little bit better. So we're going to add some drawers to the bottom. We went to our home center to grab a few sheets of 3/4 inch plywood, and since our store won't cut down sheet goods, we just headed outside, threw it in our truck. Well, not so fast. Our Honda Civic isn't a huge fan of sheet goods, so we set down the plywood on top of some polystyrene foam insulation. This foam will act as a cutting mat and prevent the saw blade from hitting the ground. We then paired our circular saw up with the Craig rip cut jig to break down the sheets into their rough dimensions. What I mean here is that I cut everything about 1 inch oversized at this point, so that I can use the table saw to finalize the dimensions so everything is exact. That's not to say you couldn't use your circular saw for the whole thing, it would just be a lot more work. Oh, and by the way, we have full plans and cut lists available for free for both our mobile workbench that you saw earlier and these drawers over on our website at spenceleydesignco.com, which is also linked down in the description below. With the plywood broken down into manageable sheets the Civic can hold, I loaded everything up in the car and strapped it securely down. Now, we only live about a 1/4 mile away from the home center, so we're happy with this, but if you're getting on the highway, you might want to rethink this idea. And once I got everything home, I unloaded the plywood in the shop and called it a night. The next day, I was about to start breaking the plywood down further until I realized one small thing. These large sheets were not going to work in our shop. So I popped open the garage door only to realize that it's now snowing outside. Lovely. So I wheeled the workbench and table saw cart further up in the shop and then got to work, while getting blasted with snow. This is when I brought a lot of the pieces down to their final size, as I can really dial in the precision on the table saw faster than I can with the circular saw. If you're cutting large sheets like this alone, make sure to use a feather board to help keep that piece against the fence. And now I don't think watching me cut a million pieces of plywood is actually helpful to anyone, since there's a free cut list provided with this project, so let me show you an animation of what we're actually going to be doing here. So, we have this workbench built. And once again, we have a full video and detailed plans for this project that's linked below. On the left side, there's a ton of empty space that we want to utilize for storage. And this is what the bay of drawers is going to look like. There are 2 large drawers at the bottom and 8 smaller drawers on the top of each side for a total of 20 drawers. They're all going to be on full extension drawer slides so we can easily reach everything deep inside the drawer. This bay of drawers will slide in under the workbench, so if we ever build a new bench or something, we can easily slide this whole segment out and keep it. Think future-proofing, if you will. Oh yeah, and they're recessed on purpose. I don't want to bang my knees against any drawer pulls and still want to be able to clamp things to the workbench top. So to get started on everything, we will cut down 3 equal side partitions and then add some top stretchers. This is a perfect place to utilize some scraps. And then add the same stretchers to the bottom to make this whole thing stable. From there, we'll build some drawers that will slide in. Alright, so let's pause for a second and see how that plywood's coming. Okay, great. We're still going. Well, back to the animation. Let me highlight the drawers real quick in case you've never made any of those before. Like I said earlier, there will be 2 different size drawers, 4 larger ones and 16 smaller ones. They'll be constructed with some pocket holes to make a simple square frame, and then a 1/4 inch sheet of plywood will be glued and nailed to the bottom. No fancy joinery methods here, it's just shop furniture. Then we will throw some false fronts on each drawer. Alright, so now the plywood has to be finished. Oh, what the f***? Are you kidding me? Still going? Okay, yeah. So that's the drawers, so back to the main build. Like I said earlier, we will add those drawers between the vertical partitions until all 20 drawers are installed. Alright, no, seriously, I've got to be finished cutting now. This guy's not getting a raise next year. Then that whole bay can be attached to the workbench and we will be all set. Hopefully that was actually helpful, walking you through exactly what we're going to be building instead of just seeing me randomly cut a bunch of plywood. And I swear, if I'm not done breaking down plywood now, I'm not finishing this project. Oh, it's done? Alright, cool, great. So there we go. we've got a whole workbench full of drawer pieces. I grabbed our Craig R3 pocket hole jig and set everything up for 3/4 inch stock, then started drilling a few hundred pocket holes into all the front and back pieces of each drawer. And let me tell you, I highly suggest upgrading to the K5 or 4 models if you have to do this many pocket holes. It was terrible. I am curious to know though, what Craig jig does everybody have out there? A poll should pop up at the top of your screen and let me know your favorite version. As I was cutting all the pieces, I started to realize that I could easily add even more organization to the drawers by adding some drop-in panels to help divide the contents inside. By raising the blade about halfway through the drawer sides and making a few cuts indexed by 2 stop blocks on the crosscut sled, I could cut grooves where wood panels could be added to any drawers of my choice. I'll show you more later, but just know this is where I cut those in. Now we can get to putting the drawer boxes together. I grabbed one side and one front, applied a little bit of glue, spread it around evenly, and then clamped the pieces tightly together. And after checking for square, I could drive pocket hole screws in to secure the 2 pieces together. I repeated the same thing to attach the other side and then attached the back. Miranda came out to lend me a hand since she's the chief glue officer. And while we build all the drawers, if you're enjoying this video and have a quick second of your time to spare, we'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button down below. That lets YouTube know that they should suggest this video to other viewers, and it really helps us out. Thank you so much. With all the frames of the boxes built, we need to cut down some 1/4 inch plywood for the drawer bottoms. Again, these sheets were cut slightly oversized in the parking lot. I'm just bringing them down to their final size using the table saw and then cross-cutting them to their final size. After a little bit of glue is added to the underside of the drawer box, I set down the 1/4 inch plywood panel and secured it in place with a few brad nails. These nails will just hold the panel in place until the glue dries, but if you want to, you could always come back and reinforce everything with some screws. And to get a perfect fit on this bottom panel, I grabbed our cordless palm router with a chamfer bit and went around the perimeter of the drawer box. This will flush up the edges and kinda hide the plywood. Big thanks to Brad over at Fix This Build That for this idea. As I work my way through the rest of these boxes and make an absolute mess of sawdust, I wanted to ask you to please consider subscribing to our channel. We put out new project videos each and every week, and if you enjoyed this free content, we'd really appreciate your support. At the time of recording, we have 246 subscribers, and we would love to have you join our community and help this tiny channel grow. Thanks so much for your support. With all the drawers finalized, I could rip down the top and bottom stretchers to join the vertical partitions. And look at that, perfect timing. Everyone's favorite truck delivered this massive case of drawer slides. Exactly what we need now. I slid in one of the vertical partitions under the workbench and then set down a drawer slide, one of the drawers, and then another drawer slide, and a final piece of scrap. The reason for doing this is I can now measure the exact length that the stretcher pieces need to be for the drawers to operate smoothly. A keen eye will notice that this is about 1/8 of an inch off the planes. That's from small compounded errors and from the plywood not being exactly 3/4 of an inch thick. I then cut all their pieces to their dialed in size on the table saw and then, oh come on, seriously? More pocket holes? And this is when the project really starts to come together into something that looks tangible. I started gluing and screwing all the stretcher pieces to the vertical partitions, making sure that everything was square. I also made sure to stagger the pieces slightly so that none of the screws of the pocket holes hit each other. Once the first layer was on, I dropped on the middle vertical partition and kept working my way through the outer case. Now the exciting part, putting it in the bench. And honestly, for a quick second, I thought it wasn't going to fit, but luckily, even my mediocre woodworking skills prevailed today. To keep the cabinet from sliding around on the workbench, I pre-drilled some countersunk holes and held everything in place while I screwed in some 1-inch screws. And now, time to attach the drawers. Honestly, drawer slides are pretty easy to install if you just take your time. I set down a scrap piece of 3/4 inch plywood on each side of the cabinet, and after grabbing a drawer slide and taking it apart, I could set the thicker segment on top of the block and inset it about 1/16 of an inch from the front of the vertical partition. After attaching it with a few screws and making sure it didn't move around, I could remove the spacer blocks and reinsert the smaller part of the drawer slide. I laid down some scraps of 1/4 inch plywood to prevent the drawer box from bottoming out as it slides, and then pulled the drawer slide out just enough to reveal the first mounting hole on the side. I drove in a screw and then moved to the other side. I continued the process of slowly pulling the drawer out and attaching the slide to the side of the box until it was held in place and everything would slide nicely. Now the next drawer is not much different. I just added 2 scrap pieces this time to elevate the slide and attach it just like I did before. I could then place a 1-inch scrap piece on top of the bottom drawer and then set the next drawer in, and work my way up installing all of the drawers on this side of the cabinet. And before moving to the opposite side though, I realized that if I used the same spacer pieces as the other side, the screws holding the drawer slides would hit each other, so I needed to raise the drawer slides on this side a little bit higher with the help of some additional scrap pieces. And once this was all figured out, I could install the rest of them. To attach the drawer fronts, I set down some 1/8 inch scrap and set the drawer front on it, but you could also use some playing cards here. I then secured the drawer front with a few clamps and could slide the whole assembly out. From the inside, I could pre-drill some countersunk holes and then drive in screws to securely hold the drawer front in place. Just make sure to stay off to the side and don't go directly in the center where your drawer pulls are going to go. And with the drawer front secured, I removed the clamps and slid it in. The remaining drawers are really no different. Just set that spacer piece on top of the drawer underneath and follow the same steps as before. While I finish up installing these drawer fronts, we want to hear from you. What kind of projects do you want to see us build? Leave us a comment below, and if we pick your idea, we'll feature your comment in a future video. We're super excited to hear what you come up with, and thanks for hanging out with us. So at this point, we're pretty much done. All the drawers are installed, and the only thing else that we need to do is put some drawer pulls on it. Now, this video is already getting kind of long, so instead of going into all the details, I'm just going to post another video right up here in the future for you to check it out. I basically just followed the steps that Johnny from Crafted Workshop highlighted in his video a few years back. You just cut some bevels on 4 sides of some scrap pieces, and you'll come up with these poles, simple and cheap. To attach the poles to the drawers, I whipped up this quick jig. It basically just rests on the corner of each drawer and has holes already drilled, so I know exactly where to drill in every drawer. And after removing the jig, you'll have 2 holes and they'll be in the exact same spot on each and every drawer. I also made a few holes in the jig so I could pre-drill holes into the drawer pulls as well. The poles get clamped onto this jig and then the holes are drilled into the pole. Back inside the drawer, I countersunk the holes that were previously drilled through the fronts. And with those holes drilled, I partially threaded some screws in by hand and then drove them in so they're just barely sticking out from the drawer front. I can then insert the point of the screw into the hole on the drawer pole until everything is securely fastened together and the drawer functions perfectly. And the last thing that we wanted to do here was add some colored stripes to each drawer. We picked up this super cheap set of acrylic paint for about $4 that's going to give us a ton of different colors and just the right amount of paint. I taped off a stripe on each drawer front and laid down some white paint to help make the colors pop a little bit more. Now you might have noticed earlier that those top drawers didn't actually match the rest of the drawers. They were cut with some scrap laying around the shop, so we decided to paint those black first. But you know, for anyone who doesn't watch this, they'll think this was some kind of unique design idea. And that's cool too. All these colors will easily allow us to identify drawers. If someone wants to know where a flush trim router bit is, instead of saying, oh, it's the third drawer down on the left side furthest from the shop vac, you just say, seafoam green. With all the colored stripes painted, I threw down some thick water-based poly on the fronts and put the drawers back where they belong. The very last thing I wanted to show you was those drawer dividers that I mentioned earlier. I cut down some hardboard into strips and then I could insert them into the drawers. I'm not sure if we're actually going to use these that much, but at least it's nice to know this is an option, I guess. This stuff is pretty cheap, so it's not really a loss if we end up not using these in a single drawer.